Hey, everybody, welcome to Leadership Pathway. My name is Dave Miller. I'll be your host today. I think we're talking about the most essential of the ingredients, of the seven ingredients, this series we've been in, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But first, let me introduce our guests. I'm just going to ping around the room here. We're lucky to have you guys. Mandi Smith, introduce yourself to us.
Yeah, I am from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, out in the great Midwest, the great South Dakota state. I work for a church called Ransom Church, and we've had a residency since 2014, and I get to lead that. And I was leading church planting, but just recently kind of stepped away of our church planting arm, and I'm now in the pastor of biblical community, which really just means discipleship. But we got to give it fancy words. So.
Fancy words. Excellent. Kristin?
My name's Kristin. I live in Denver, Colorado. I've kind of lived all over the US, but I've been in ministry for most of my adult life and worked for churches as well. And even for a short term, worked in higher ed, recruiting students to ministry and helping them on a path towards that. And so, yeah, I very passionate about this conversation with young people and helping others lead them and guide them in this path.
And Ryan.
Well, great to be here, everybody. Glad to be able to share a little bit of thoughts. But for me, I grew up in the ministry, doing youth ministry primarily, and in California, and then moved out to Oklahoma about 15 years ago to run a leadership college, kind of like a residency program. Did that for 8.5 years. We partnered with a local university, and then the church side of it took care of all of the ministry training, practicum, leadership development, all that kind of stuff. Have been connected with Leadership Pathway for quite a while, and excited to just continue to help other churches around the nation find ways to develop their people and develop pipelines. And so I'm excited for this conversation. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. We just put this book out, and if you'll hang tight through this webinar today, this recording, I'll let you know how you can get it for free. They're sitting they're right behind that door, right there. There's 10 books. One might have your name on it if you hang with us. Okay. I'm going to ask you guys, I'm going to give you a couple minutes to do some math in your mind. I want to know how many hours of coaching each of you have done in the last 12 months. Okay, so so if you think about how many you do a week times 50 or so, right? I'm going to say for me personally, I've done maybe 100, 120, 125 hours of coaching young leaders and people that lead them in the last year. Mandi, how many hours have you coached in the last year?
I think I'm probably around 1,300, 1,400 hours.
1,500 hours.
Yeah.
Okay. Ryan?
I'm going to go with probably about 400-ish.
Wow. Kristin?
Okay, I didn't do the math. Help me out. I did about 20. This is so terrible. I do average 20, 25 a week.
20
So
hours a week times 50 weeks. So you're saying 1,000 hours? Yeah.
yeah.
So collectively among us, I've said almost 4,000 hours of coaching just in the last year.
I mathed wrong. I added a
Uh-oh.
zero. Mine was more, 140. Let's do that.
Okay,
I added 20
140,
zeros. Sorry, too
290,
many.
so 1,700. That's still a lot of hours. 1,700 hours amongst the four of us, just the four of us.
Mhm.
Coaching young leaders or coaching people that lead young leaders. Either way, you're in that world. When we say soft skills, what do we mean?
Yeah, so soft skills are really like these non-technical type of skills. They're interpersonal, really emotional type of competencies that we think could really like hang young people up. Really, they hang all of us up, but young people haven't had opportunities to develop them as much. There's lots of conversations around hard skills, and so those are like the tasks that you do, what work you actually do. But then the other thing, soft skills is like how do you work? So thinking about how you manage yourself and how you get the tasks done, that is kind of the foundational thing around soft skills. I think
If
Kristen might have a better definition. She's better at that
Kristin,
answer.
what's your definition of soft skills?
I mean, I think yours was great, Mandy. It's the real life skills that you learn doing with people sharpening you in the moment. You don't learn it in a textbook or classroom. It's real life skills. And honestly, like from our perspective, as we focus on ministry leaders, it is, or these are the things that cut ministry short. People quit or get fired over these components, not as much on your biblical knowledge or how deeply you're walking with Jesus. It's these things that irritate us when people can't have a conversation looking you in the eye or answering an email or, whatever the case may be.
Ryan, give me some examples. Let's talk about if we were making a list on the wall, hard skill of, let's take student ministry, for example. Give me some hard skills of student ministries and then lay them up, and we'll make a second column. Let's talk about some specific of these things of soft skills. Give me some hard skills first. If you had 2 years, you had 104 weeks to help someone understand what it takes to be a youth pastor and they want to do it, what are some hard skills that you would make sure that they had to have?
I think a lot of us go immediately right to preaching, right? You got to be able to preach. I think you got to be able to calendar. You got to be able to budget. You got to be able to event plan. You've got to be able to, recruit leaders, those types of things. So I think those are a lot of like the hard skills that we're going to look at and say, okay, those things kind of show up on a resume. Those things show up when we're talking to them, just show me what you done, what you did, it's like, I went from this many leaders to this many leaders. Yeah. I've preached in front of this many people and here's my video sample. And I've led this event and here's all that, it was a 5-day event and we did this, and this, right? So these are like these very tangible things that we can touch and we can feel and we can measure, right? There's a lot of measurables in there. Although some of that might be subjective, right? Like preaching is super subjective, but you can still see that it's a hard skill that can be trained and learned. I mean, we teach it in college, right? Like there's entire classes on 3-point sermons or topical, expository, right? So there's very hard skills there. But I think when we start moving into the soft skills is, okay, can you actually relate to those leaders that you've recruited?
I'm looking at page 59 in the book. Let me just click through a few of them. You guys respond. Yep. Self-care, teachability, failing forward, time management, detail management, communication, initiative, self-awareness, flexibility, delegating, developing, influence. Like when those first several topics that you mentioned, Ryan, it sounded like the syllabus from fall class at my school, my undergrad we would have called it practical ministries. Even though practically speaking, the professors who were lovely people, they probably never did it, but they had to teach that class. And so they sat and thought, what do you need to know when you get out there? And so you mentioned those things. I don't recall a class on initiative, self-awareness, continual growth. Some of those things were probably implied. So how do we get these soft skills into these leaders as they're starting in ministry? Do we teach a course? What's the best way to deliver these things? How do we do it?
Well, one way that we try to encourage Leadership Pathway does is we have a guidebook that lists those specific skills. And yes, it's in a book, but each chapter is really about 4 or 5 pages. It's like understanding what the topic is, and then a series of questions that a coach, a leader should be asking their resident. And ideally, instead of just like reading the chapter, or in a few instances, I'll hear pastors say, yeah, I handed the guidebook to the resident and I wanted them to read it and give me a book report. It's not that.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
the leader saying, okay, this month we're going to focus on self-care. Let's look at this together. And then the next week you meet again and say, well, let me ask a couple questions. And what does this poke holes at? Where are you not doing well in your RPMs, relationally, physically, mentally, spiritually? And what are you going to do about it? And holding then that resident accountable to walking 3 times a week. Did you do it? Did you not? And why is that? And what are you going to do differently? So it's just it's coaching that person with the real time specific things in conversation and holding them accountable to go do those things to get better.
I mean, you're referencing this guidebook right here. That's the coach's version, brown. You're referencing this guidebook, the green one. The ones that lay on my desk, the green one still feels kind of new because I don't really open it a lot. This thing, no matter who I'm coaching, I tend to go back to this thing over and over to find questions to ask on these specific things. Mandi, you're still in ministry. You're employed at a church, at a growing church somewhere north of Denver, west of Minneapolis.
West Minneapolis, north of Omaha.
Yeah, there you go. North of Omaha. How do you, I mean, so you have to find time to sit down and do this. How do you do that?
Yeah, it takes a lot of intentionality. Um, we just have to slow down, right? Long enough to help show somebody else like what it means to do this. Often it looks like an hour a week that we're just spending time having conversations around these specific soft skills. I mean, in addition to all the other ministry type tasks that we're doing, but it does take slowing down. As Kristin was talking, I know that we've used this analogy before, but I think we're an older generation, grew up, we compare like maps to a GPS. So like we had to figure out how to get to the next place. We just had to look at a map and figure out how we got there without any direction. But the younger generation really has had turn by turn instructions their whole life. And so this is a lot about helping them to think for themselves. And so asking questions, letting them perform in a way to get these things done, and then coming back and keeping them accountable helps them to actually be able to learn for themselves. But it does take slowing down.
I remember reading about the third rail I was reading an article about how trains were developed in when electricity started moving trains, and I've always likened education, this college thing, and spiritual formation, which we'll talk about next month, which is, of course, I mean, it's sort of like the head and the heart, right? Like how do we educate people? We have to be smarter than ever. We have to be smarter than ever to be in ministry, right? And then how do we form the heart? And if you don't love God, you don't love people, you're probably in the wrong business if you're in ministry, right? So those two rails have always been there, maybe. But this idea of the third rail is where the power of the third rail, but it kills you if you don't get it right. I remember reading that in an article back when they were first making electric. The third rail of soft skills. So let's have a little debate. I started by saying, I think this is the most important thing. And people are like, how can you say that? When it comes to helping a young leader start in ministry, not the most important thing in the world forever and all men, all time. Amen. And I say that because people will push back on that. Loving God and forming your heart is the most important thing. Who here knows a leader who was very smart, MDiv, or just savvy, maybe no college? Doesn't matter if they were formally educated or not, but they were smart. They were educated and they loved Jesus, but they still did not make it for some reason in ministry. Let's go around the room here. Can we speak into this? Anybody?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a lot of this kind of stuff that we're talking about. They don't know how to relate to people, take care of themselves. I mean, just the rise of pastors making decisions that eliminate them from ministry, right? Just It's not taking care of themselves subtly. And so a lot of it comes back to these soft skills and those practices.
Mhm.
Kristin?
Yeah, I just to kind of build on what Ryan was saying, I have come to believe just in all the conversations that I've had and that time management sounds like a very nitty-gritty, meticulous, whatever kind of topic to focus on. And yet when we don't take time to carve out our personal lives and our professional lives, these other things tank,
Mm.
and we wonder why does a leader morally fail?
Mm.
Were they spending time in the Word? Were they spending time with their family? And so,
Well, and self-care, like,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Self-care,
that too.
like,
Yeah, totally, totally. So it may seem clerical, but it's not. It's like these are the fundamentals that like help you sustain in ministry. Um, I was thinking about too, like, talent. We tend to hire based on talent and charisma and that lasts for so long. Or, if without good self-care, like you said, Ryan, I mean, like you will coast on that. You will depend upon yourself, even with the best of intentions, trying to follow Jesus and lead others to him. It's fundamental.
In your hundreds of hours of coaching in the last year, like we started by talking, how much of your time do you find that people that are leading young leaders, are they apt to go straight to these topics each week when you're hopping on the phone? Or do they want to talk about the lower hanging fruit sorts of things week to week? Do you find any patterns there or things you have to remind yourself of to come back to? Mandi, I'll start with you on that.
Yeah, almost every time we have to remind them about the guidebook and just like working through some of these soft skills. And sometimes they're, I wouldn't say necessarily complaint, but the thing that they're asking us to help them work through underlying is a soft skill thing that they're just not even thinking about, right? They're going, man, I gave this task to this resident and they just didn't get the job done. And what's going on? And so then we have to go, well, did you help them learn how to calendar and do time management? And are they like working that system? And often it's like, oh, but it's often so much more intuitive to, again, to an older generation because they've just had to learn how to do it. They're not even thinking, wait a minute, how did I get to this place where I knew how to use my calendar and time management
Mm-hmm.
to like then apply it to them?
Where do you
But
think?
more often than not, for
Where do
sure.
you think with older generations? Where did this stuff come from? Do you think? Like it seems as though you could Google
Mhm.
issues with Gen Z, right, and just knock yourself the libraries that are full, the articles, the tsunami of content out there. Like, and it's easy to fall into the trap. You just roll your, kids these days. Well, they work and they show up. Where did this stuff used to come from that we no longer, evidently, we no longer have it? What do you think?
Mm,
I don't know that it was. I don't know. I think a lot of generation, like even just a couple generations ago, it was just about hard work. Like
Yeah,
if you could just grind and work
yeah,
50, 60 hours a week,
right,
like in a lot of places, in a lot of ways, it's like we didn't really care if you were kind of a jerk,
right,
right? Like you
right,
just
Mhm.
you produced, right? And
right.
you made it. And so it was just kind of like this gritty, hardy, hard work. Kind of, I don't know, it wasn't as even valued. I mean,
Mhm.
obviously it was causing lots of damage,
Mm-hmm.
but
mhm,
Mhm.
that wasn't even as popular or even accepted to say like, oh, I've been, that's hurtful. I shouldn't be treated this way. And
Right,
that wasn't even accepted or
right.
allowed to even like have those conversations. Really, it was
Mhm.
just keep going, just keep plowing, just keep, it was like,
Mhm.
and so I don't know that it was even,
Mhm.
obviously the need for them were there,
Right.
but I don't
mhm,
know there was really a language
mhm.
for it even to have that conversation. I don't know that there was a language for it. And
Yeah.
so,
I
I mean,
think as a Gen Xer, I can say that like we were kind of free range kids. I don't remember my parents checking on me, playing outside. It was just come in before dark. And I think that instilled something that, didn't happen with my millennial children. And now
mm,
Gen Z and Alpha, like we're much more guided and protected. And so to back to the GPS versus the map, we're giving them every step. And so we've kind of created a little bit of
Mhm.
this, much like we had to adapt in our own circumstances to pull up our bootstraps and love the pats on the back when we were high capacity. That's not the same culture we live in.
Mm.
And so we have to realize that throughout all history, there's always a rub against the generation before and after, and we have to somehow find a way to meet in the middle and work alongside each other.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure, not trying to shame any generation in this conversation.
Yeah.
We just, as we evolve, right, we learn new problems that we then have to evolve and learn around. And I mean, the thing that we often talk about is like how zealous and passionate, you know, Gen Z and Gen Alpha are. That's
Mm.
something that we never have to teach them, but often we had to teach an older generation that.
Right.
And so,
Right.
like, they are just that passionate and zealous people, but they just need the foundational things that was the part that we worked on early on.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
Ryan, it sounds almost impossible. It sounds difficult. You, so can you frame up for people that are in ministry today when they're struggling with younger leaders that they're trying to lead? What are some low hanging first steps, next steps, just to help younger leaders in these soft skills ways? Do you think just week to week?
Yeah,
Is
I
it
think
one time and I'm done? Is it that's what I'm pushing on here. Is it a retreat? Is it take them to the mountain one time?
Mm.
What would you say?
well, you can definitely take me to the mountain. I'd love that, but I don't know.
You'd run off and leave
I,
us all,
we,
and we'd
we'd
be like, "Where's Ryan? He's running."
yeah, and I'd get all my soft skills while I was out there. Take care. No, I think it's about I think put them in the car,
Hmm.
go out to get
Yeah,
some Dr. Pepper,
yeah,
get a coffee. If you're a working mom, throw them in the car, go shopping,
Mm-hmm.
take them to the park with your kids.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just having them up close and just talking to, hey, talk to me about when you said that thing in staff meeting and nobody responded the way that you thought they responded.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like? What that feel like? What did you notice? What might you do different? Right. Hey, I see that you're kind of falling behind on some of these projects.
Mm.
What's going on?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's asking similar questions over long periods of time to see and look for deviations. So, hey, how's your eating going? How's your spiritual life? What are you reading for fun? What are you doing? And looking for those deviations over time to say, hey, I noticed that you haven't been
Mm-hmm.
eating well, or I noticed you haven't been talking about podcasts that you're used to listen to. There's something going on here. Like, are you, like, what's going on? And so I think it's just being up close enough. I think Jesus talked about that, right? Like
Mm.
walking with people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think in just a modern day, it looks like just getting
Mm-hmm.
some coffee. For me, I don't drink coffee, so a Dr. Pepper, like just
Mm-hmm.
something like that. It's just being up close enough that you can look for and see, because again, they're not going to show up on the the L10 progress report, third quarter report. These things necessarily aren't going to show up.
Right.
Well,
Mm.
hey, you had 45 leaders in Q1, and why do you only have this isn't going to show up so much. You got to be
Right.
up close. You got to look for deviations over a long time, and these are just conversations. And the thing about it is, a lot of us don't know what conversation we've been having. And that's why I feel like the guidebook is so important, because we
Yeah.
can come back to it and say, okay, well, here are some things I should be looking for.
Great.
And here's some questions that I can ask about those things, and to bring out, even have a conversation about some of these things. So again, the guidebook to me, I feel like gives us conversations, things to be aware of, things to look for.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Kristin, it strikes me that a lot of us who've done ministry or are in ministry, we run on mission. We run on vision. We run on what's going to happen tomorrow, next week, next month, next year. We're rallying people. We're galvanizing people. Ryan mentioned we're building teams, influencing, all of those things, right? I mean, for 2,000 years, it's about Saul becomes Paul, change in the future. Jesus is coming. So the books, the conferences, the people that speak it, they talk about things we can route. So much of it is about what's coming out the windshield, right? Where are we going? And a lot of people that are submerged in that world, all of us, we enjoy doing things once or twice, or maybe even for 2 months straight every week. We make that meeting, that sit down, that walk that Ryan's talking about. Have you seen patterns in the, what'd you say, 1,400 hours of coaching that you've done, whatever it is, the last year? Do you see patterns in the kinds of leaders? Are there things to look for in the kinds of leaders that thrive coaching young leaders on these kinds of things? And do you see any snares to avoid, potholes to avoid?
Well, the ones who thrive, much like Ryan saying, having them hop in the car or having a conversation, they build relational equity.
Yeah.
And, it might be difficult at first, but maybe not, because sometimes, leaders already have direct reports and they have some rapport with their other leaders, but bringing in a young person's not going to be exactly like another person on your team. This person's going to need additional attention and care because they're green. In most cases, they haven't had a true adult job. This is, unless they're a second career type, of course, if that's a little different, but still, like someone that's giving the time to have the conversations, not just the corrective conversations, but the life conversations. It's like both and that trust can only be built with that relationship. And that also means there's a level at which a leader should be appropriately vulnerable, like, hey, I'm having a tough day too. Do you mind praying for me? Like share that so that there's a mutual contributory relationship. Like we spur one another on. So I see when that trust is built, there's leaning in by a resident for both the encouragement and the challenge. When it's not going right, it's a little bit more of the attitude. I hate to say attitude. That's just the first word that came to mind, but just the mentality of telling them, here's the plan. Now go do it. I don't want to micromanage you. There is a level of which, and there's no fault in that other than we have to understand the deficit that is present. Your bias as a leader, what you have experienced for probably many years in the workforce, is something that you have acquired, but someone who is new cannot translate that readily. And so without guidance and consistent touch points, minimum of 1 hour a week having a conversation, but hopefully many more touch points throughout, is required to help this new person develop and understand the expectations, because you're clear in your communication. When there's lack of clarity, when there's lack of presence and lack of check-ins, and things just kind of fall through the cracks.
That's good.
Both the work and the resident.
Mandy, you're serving as a residency director at a local church, right? And which is really different than you're cooking in other people's kitchens, so to speak, coaching people at other churches. Do you see a pattern, the kind of staff leader that thrives? If you're a residency director or you're thinking about launching something in next level internships or a residency or something, and you're looking around your team, who's going to be the kind of leader who's going to do well in these conversations? What are you looking for in those people who can have these soft skill training and coaching sort of conversations?
Yeah, it's really, I just look at the team that they lead, whether that's the staff or the volunteers, and how they're willing to slow down and have developmental conversations, even if they wouldn't name it that at that point. And they've been able to see people in their, like their volunteer team. So like if it's kids ministry, maybe start like, hey, I'm just helping in kids, but now I've been a leader. Now I've recruited other leaders. Now I'm developing curriculum, right? Things that are rising up on their teams and where you're seeing their teammates thrive really speaks to me of like, this is a leader who other people not only love to follow, but are being developed. And so you kind of just look around and see where is that already naturally happening, and lean there. For us, this is for sure a bias, but we have several residents who have joined staff. And so they've already gone through the process. And so they want to invest back in a younger generation and to give away what they have been given as well. And so you kind of find those people that are passionate about just developing people and wanting to bring out God's best in them.
Fantastic.
I think I've heard it said somewhere, the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's somebody that, like Mandi says, that has developed people that they are people, and we all know that like we reproduce who we are, right? So are they a person that you want multiplied, right? Like their character, do they have the soft skills, right? Do they have these soft skills? Do they have some of those intangibles that again are just going to kind of come out of who that person is?
Yeah.
And so do they have some of those things that you want multiplied, and not just, well, they know how to, again, the hard skills. Do they have more than just that?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
What we don't do is put a resident in a weak ministry area where the team is not thriving. You don't want to reproduce it. We don't bring in a new person to fix the scenario. And in that circumstance, the soft skill development will probably be non-existent or very minimal. And therefore, nobody wins, really.
Right.
Okay. Developmental conversations, mental wellness plan, best practices, ownership, education, soft skills. Next month, we're going to talk about spiritual formation. Final thoughts, comments on this critical topic? Anybody? Jump ball?
I think one thing I would just add in is that part of what Leadership Pathway provides is also a resource guide, not just the resource guide book, but also there's a website platform that has all kinds of other resources with each one of these soft skills that has that. In my coaching, I'm often referencing that when we find a hot topic, that's the thing, right? Like there's 12 of them, right? Or whatever there is, 20, 24, whatever it is. And so when you're going through some of these, you might be like, oh, they've got this one, they got this one, this got this. We found something, right? And you kind of double click there, you kind of circle back there, and you begin to find those supplementary, those secondary things. So for example, like for me, like self-awareness, this is one that comes up quite a bit in my coaching. They're just not aware that, when they say these things, it's offensive, or when they do this, it's kind of flirtatious, or what, right. They're just not aware. Right. And so we can kind of come back to that and say, okay, well, hey, here's some extra resources, extra podcasts, blog posts, TED Talks, articles, books, and so like, for example, we can reference another book, things like that. And so I think just having those extra resources, again, when you do find something that is, hey, we need to spend some time on that. Maybe this one is 2 months, right? Or maybe we, like an onion, right? Like we get the top layer now, and then in 3 months, we're going to come back to it, and we're going to, okay, how is it developed, right? And so again, as a young leader, 3 months, they can look a lot different in 3 months, right? Yeah. So I think just being able to come back to some of these, again, like you talked about earlier, Dave, like it's not a one and done. It's not like, well, we talked about that 12 months ago, so he better have it. It's like, well, a lot has changed. Let's come back to, and how does it look now? It's like scripture, right? The words haven't changed, but what you need to hear in that moment is different. And so how you hear time management as a 40-year-old that has a wife and 2 kids looks a lot different than when you hear time management as a 22-year-old.
So good.
Yeah.
So coming back to these, because your life changed. And that's what I love about soft skills, is that they're ever evolving. and they do need coaching throughout the evolution of your leadership journey and keeping coming back to them.
So good. Mandi, final thoughts?
Yeah, I think a lot about even what Leadership Pathway does is it helps a coach be reflective of their own coaching. I think sometimes we aren't even, as we're coaching young people, having those conversations, we're not even thinking back like, well, how did I present that conversation? What questions did I ask? Did I allow space for them to even comment back to me, or was I filling that whole conversation? And I think so much of what we do as developers is we don't actually take time to be reflective ourselves and go, oh, how could that have gone better? Or where were the wins? Now, how could I ask those same type of questions next time? So I would say that the other thing I would just say is these skills are transferable. They go on your wealth of ministry. You know, I've changed jobs. We've all talked about changing jobs. They travel with you and they will pay dividends for a lifetime.
It's great. Kristin?
Good. Extracting what you know to someone who's new, that's difficult. Yeah. But I would say one of the things that we provide at Leadership Pathway is that we coach your coaches so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel, so that with all the other 100 things you have to do in a day and in a week, we hyper focus on this resident thing. And so our goal is to help a leader then help a resident. So it's like a leadership development that's happening not just for this new person, but potentially for that leader too, just because it's a different angle. It's not as if they don't have the skills. Of course they do, and they have the knowledge, but it's just like in that moment, can you be still and kind of reorganize your thoughts? The other thing too, like sometimes when we talk to churches that have someone who's like oversight of the residency, it's difficult as a peer on the org chart to speak into a fellow coworker, and we can do that. So and just because this is our hyper focus, and it's really about advancing these young leaders because the church needs them, and we can't be easily dismissive. We have to be invested, and so we help you help them.
This is not easy, but I think I've heard Ryan Latham say development's not easy, but just think about if you don't develop this leader, how hard that's going to be for all of us someday. So appreciate you guys, all of your work. I mean that. I appreciate it even when you have to record things twice because someone forgets to hit the record button like me. But if you're listening to this and you want a copy of this book, years ago, Who's the Next You? I think Kristin coined that. It was a cliche. It wound up on social media. It became a sticker on our water bottles. It went on a coaster. Eventually, it became the title of the book. But the power in this question is when there's actually an answer. When you're like, who's the next you? And there's actually a name. Bill Thompson, Becky Smith, and it's in your wallet or it's stuck to your computer and you're praying for this person and you're working with this person and you're looking for opportunities to speak life into them, making sure all 7 of these ingredients are present in their leadership journey, and especially the truth-telling, difficult things of the soft skills. So if you would like a copy of this, all you have to do is email me. It's pretty easy. Dave@leadershippathway.org. Anything we can do to help you answer that question in your own life as a leader, please reach out. Thanks so much. Thanks, guys.